A new year, a new look cabinet as the Prime Minister's reshuffle gets underway. Immigration Minister Brandon Lewis has been made chairman of the Conservative Party, replacing Patrick McLauchlan. Before the reshuffle began, James Brokenshire said he was stepping down as Northern Ireland Secretary due to ill health. We'll have all the latest from Downing Street, also this lunchtime. Former football coach Barry Bennell pleads guilty to 6 child sex offences as his trial gets underway. Hollywood's sexual harassment scandal dominates the Golden Globe Awards as the stars all dress in black to show solidarity with victims. The BBC's China editor Carrie Gracie quits her role over gender pay after turning down a pay rise. She says she couldn't collude with an unfair pay structure.
Oh, it's at the edge. Australia thinks so, so does the umpire.
And it's all over. England bow to the inevitable as they lose the test and the series 4-0.
Here, the family of a woman murdered by her ex-partner expressed their dismay after a report highlights failings in the way police dealt with the case. And rail passengers face a week of disruption due to strikes.
Good afternoon and welcome to the BBC News at 1. Theresa May has begun the most extensive reshuffle of her cabinet team since she became Prime Minister. In the past few minutes, Immigration Minister Brandon Lewis has been named the new Conservative Party chairman, replacing Patrick McLauchlan. Mrs May is also due to announce a successor for her close ally, Damian Green, who was sacked for breaching the ministerial code. Earlier this morning, the Northern Ireland Secretary James Brokenshire resigned from the cabinet for health reasons. Our political correspondent Ben Wright reports.
A new year, a new cabinet.
Morning, Prime Minister. Will this reshuffle rejuvenate the party?
She will certainly hope so after the Tories' botched election last year. The question is, who will she choose to chop, rejig and promote within her team?
Morning, Mr Hunt.
This morning, the Health Secretary Jeremy Hunt was swerving speculation he might be on the move.
Morning, how are you?
Are you expecting to be out of the cabinet?
So was the Education Secretary Justine Greening. Like her other cabinet colleagues, she can't be sure of having a ministerial car by the end of the day. The reshuffle began with the resignation of the Northern Ireland Secretary James Brokenshire, who has chosen to leave the cabinet because of health issues. He's been in the job since Theresa May became Prime Minister in 2016.
My intent is to get on with surgery, get on with recovery and get back to my duties as MP for Old Bexley and Sidcup and also back to frontline political duties as well.
Other cabinet ministers, like the Work and Pension Secretary David Gauke, spent the morning watching their phones, waiting to learn their fate.
Until you are sort of properly contacted, you carry on as normal, you carry on doing your job. And
so you haven't been given a steer that you're safe?
I haven't been given a steer that I'm safe.
Last year was bruising for Theresa May's own party after the Tories failed to win the snap election. The party's chairman, Patrick McLauchlan, copped a lot of the blame, and this morning he stepped down from his post, the first to leave Downing Street after meeting the Prime Minister. A shake-up of the Conservative Party is today's reshuffle, something many Tory MPs want to see.
This is a chance for her to reshape her vision of what her party in government is about. We do need to think about intellectual renewal, campaigning renewal and membership renewal, a modern party with a modern message for a modern Britain.
The promoted are summoned to Downing Street, and the first through the door this morning was Brandon Lewis.
Mr Lewis, are you the new party chairman?
He is. The appointment confirmed a few minutes ago. The comings and goings will carry on all day, but the Chancellor, Foreign Secretary, Brexit and Home Secretaries are all expected to stay put, as will Downing Street's resident Big Beast. Ben Wright, BBC News, Westminster.
Our assistant political editor Norman Smith is in Downing Street. So that reshuffle underway, but only one confirmed change so far and in the last half hour.
And it may be a more modest reshuffle than perhaps many had thought. But let's be clear, reshuffles rarely change the political weather. Most people, when we talk about new ministers, who, And the sense is that this reshuffle could perhaps be more focused, less on changing the political weather and more on the profile of the Tory party, the party machine. And we've certainly seen that with the appointment of a new chairman, Brandon Lewis, who one expects will have a remit to shake up the Tories' election machine after its setback in the election last year. A sense that new people are going to have to be brought in to enable it to compete more effectively against Jeremy Corbyn's ability to get new members and to campaign on digital media and social media. We're also expecting promotions, perhaps tomorrow, for newer MPs, younger Tory MPs, women, Tories from ethnic minority backgrounds, to give the Conservative government a more modern feel, a more diverse feel. And we are expecting some of those MPs elected in 2015, 2017 also to be given their chance, because there's a slight pressure cooker feeling on the backbenches that some of them want their chance to show what they can do. So a reshuffle designed perhaps not to solve all Mrs May's political difficulties, but to help her in terms of party management and the profile the Tory party presents.
Norman Smith in Downing Street, thank you. The former football coach Barry Bennell has pleaded guilty to 7 offences of child sexual assault. The 63-year-old, who is now known as Richard Jones, admitted the charges before the start of his trial at Liverpool Crown Court. The ex-Crewe coach is charged with a total of 55 offences between 1979 and 1991. His alleged victims were boys aged between 8 and 15 years old. Our sports correspondent Andy Swiss is in Liverpool for us now. Andy.
Yes, Sophie, Barry Bennell, who's standing trial here under his new name of Richard Jones, isn't actually here in person. Instead, he appeared via a video link wearing a grey jumper, and he pleaded guilty to 6 counts of indecent assault against 2 complainants aged between 11 and 14 at the time. And we can now report that he'd already pleaded guilty to a 7th offence at an earlier hearing. Now, in total, Barry Bennell's charged with 55 sexual offences, 42 counts of indecent assault, 11 counts of serious sexual assault and 2 counts of attempted serious sexual assault. The charges relate to 12 complainants who were between the ages of 8 and 15 at the time of the alleged offences, which it's claimed happened between 1979 and 1991. Now, Barry Bennell is a former football coach, a former youth coach with Crewe Alexandra. He also worked for a number of other clubs across the northwest of England, including Stoke City and Manchester City. He'll now face a trial on the outstanding 48 charges, and that trial is expected to last up to 8 weeks, Sophie.
Andy Swiss at Liverpool Crown Court, thank you. The 75th Golden Globe Awards in Los Angeles have been dominated by powerful speeches about Hollywood's sexual abuse scandal. It was the first major awards ceremony since the film industry was hit by sexual harassment allegations. Almost all of those attending chose to wear black to show support for the victims. The big film winner of the night was 3 billboards outside Ebbing, Missouri, which took home 4 awards. Here's our North America correspondent, James Cook.
In Hollywood, they turned the red carpet black. This was a show of solidarity for those who'd been abused and harassed, and a demonstration of the determination to change.
There is no way that I am ever going to be in a room and be treated in the way that people have been treated ever again, and not stand up and not say I don't agree with that. The whole reason why that was able to take place, like anything that's abuse of power, is silence.
Emma Watson was one of several actresses who arrived with an activist as her guest.
Actually, this cuts across generations, across ethnicities, across communities, and actually if we stand together we can end this, right?
It's just done, it's just over. There's going to be a zero tolerance policy from now on.
Time's up. There's some things that we don't need to discuss anymore. Equal pay for equal work? Well, duh. Harassment in the workplace? Come on. Time's up on all of that stuff.
From the moment the ceremony began, its tone was set.
Good evening, ladies and remaining gentlemen.
And here are the all-male nominees.
Natalie Portman highlighted the failure of the Golden Globes to recognise female directors. and star after star lined up to give voice to a movement now known as Time's Up.
Time is up. We see you, we hear you, and we will tell your stories. Thank you.
It was really great to be in this room tonight and to be a part of the tectonic shift in our industry's power structure.
But no speech was more powerful than Oprah Winfrey's.
So I want all the girls watching here and now to know that a new day is on the horizon.
Absent, of course, was the fallen mogul Harvey Weinstein. Instead, the spotlight was on two of his most prominent accusers, who arrived together.
We have a little bit more of an opportunity to lead nationally and internationally so that everyone everywhere can work safely, earn the same money for the same work, and we can finally put sexual harassment in the way past where it should have been a long time ago.
Is that happening?
Human rights.
Is it happening?
It's basically 4 months ago, you couldn't have dreamed of a night like this and the conversations that are being had. And I think it's exciting times for all of us.
Well, time and again here on this red carpet, we've heard the same word, and that word is change. The stars who've been walking down here are insisting that this is not just a moment, this is a process which they will continue. James Cook, BBC News at the Golden Globes in Hollywood.
The BBC's China editor, Carrie Gracie, has stepped down from the role because of what she's called an indefensible pay gap between men and women at the BBC. In an open letter addressed to licence fee payers, Carrie Gracie, who is remaining at the BBC, accused the corporation of breaking equality law. This morning, she said the reaction to her resignation showed the depth of hunger for equal pay. A BBC spokesperson says there is no systemic discrimination against women. Our media correspondent David Sillito reports.
Morning, Carrie.
Carrie Gracie arrived for work at the BBC this morning, just hours after publishing a letter to the BBC's audience, saying, "The BBC belongs to you, the licence fee payer, and I believe you have a right to know that it's breaking equality law and resisting pressure for a fair and transparent pay structure."
Chinese once called Chairman Mao the Great Helmsman.
Carrie Gracie was the BBC's China editor, but has now left that post. The reason? Male international editors were, it was revealed, being paid around 50% more than the women.
6 months ago, we discovered the pay discrepancies at the BBC. They affected me very directly. I've spent the intervening time trying to put them right through an equal pay complaint, through a formal grievance. I've repeatedly told management that I would not find it possible to go back to China in the new year without the grievance resolved. It is still unresolved, and I cannot collude in what I see as unlawful pay discrimination. It's been very moving, actually.
And this morning, she was presenting the Today program, talking about the support she had received for her stand. The BBC says an independent review of staff pay had not revealed systemic discrimination. Its gender pay gap of 9.3% is around half that of the national average, and it was committed to closing that. And it would also soon be publishing a full review of how it pays its top presenters and editors. But Carrie Gracie says she was offered $45,000. A botched solution. The real answer, she says, is a fair and open pay system for everyone. BBC News.
There are fears of an environmental disaster in the East China Sea as a tanker continues to leak oil 2 days after colliding with a cargo ship. Chinese officials have told state media the vessel, which is on fire, is in danger of exploding and sinking. South Korean planes and an American aircraft had joined the search for 32 crew members who have been missing since the incident happened 160 miles off the coast of Shanghai. Robin Brandt reports.
For 2 nights, the fire has burned. Dark black smoke feeding off the cargo of almost 1 million barrels of oil inside the Sanchi. The search and rescue operation is still trying to find all but one of the missing 32 crew members. Their fate grows more grim as time goes on. It's not clear at this stage how these two ships collided. The CF Crystal was damaged at its bow, but all on board were rescued. Chinese officials now fear the stricken Iranian ship could explode and sink. The Sanchi had left port in the Persian Gulf, bringing 136,000 tons of oil east. It had passed through the Malacca Straits and was heading up the East China Sea to South Korea when the collision happened. The Chinese authorities are leading the search and rescue effort, but there's help from South Korea and the United States. The focus, though, is increasingly turning to the environmental threat to the ocean about 200 miles off the coast of this city in that direction. With the volume of oil on board, this has the potential to be the worst spill of its kind since 1991. The last time a tanker lost oil on this scale was the Prestige off the coast of Spain in 2002. But it's not the thick black crude oil that's causing such a problem off the coast of China this time. The Sanchi is carrying condensate, a refined form of oil that's far less dense but more explosive. One expert has described the ship as a floating bomb, and its cargo is odourless and colourless, which means the job of trying to see the extent of the spill and trying to contain it is far more difficult. Robin Brandt, BBC News, Shanghai.
The time is just after 1:15. Our top story this lunchtime. Theresa May's cabinet is underway. The Immigration Minister Brandon Lewis has been made chairman of the Conservative Party, replacing Patrick McLoughlin. And coming up, why women are twice as likely as men to die from the most serious type of heart attack.
Coming up on South Today, rail passengers in the south brace themselves for a week of disruption in the ongoing industrial dispute over the role of guards. And the news gives us a glimpse into Portsmouth's past.
Rail commuters across England are facing up to 3 days of disruption as staff of 5 train companies begin a fresh wave of strikes over the role of guards and safety. Workers at Northern, Merseyrail, South Western Railway and Greater Anglia are walking out today and on Wednesday and Friday. RMT members at Southern are also staging a 24-hour walkout. Our transport correspondent Victoria Fritz is at London Waterloo Station this lunchtime. Victoria.
Hello, Sophie. Yes, you said it all there, really. London Waterloo, it's one of the busiest stations in the world. About 100,000 people come through here every single day. That's more than London Gatwick and Heathrow combined. A lot of them are going to be using South Western Railway. It's one of just 5 franchises that have workers out on strike today.
Monday mornings aren't most people's favourite time of the week, but for thousands commuting into work, things are more of a grind than usual.
RMT strike action that will affect our business today.
This isn't the first time there's been widespread industrial action over this issue. On Southern, it's the 39th.
Now, this is all over who does what on board the trains. On driver-only control trains, the driver takes over the safety-critical roles such as opening and closing the doors. Now, normally on trains, this is done by the guard. The union wants guarantees over the future of the role of the guard.
Passengers at Pudsey in Yorkshire are resigned to a week of delays and cancellations.
It's an absolute nightmare getting to work, especially today because the taxis are on a go-slow as well. So I'm just hoping that the train is actually going to come when it's supposed to.
It needs to stop because we need to be at work on time, isn't it?
Just want to get to college, really. I don't understand why trains are being delayed all the time, to be honest.
Strikes started at midnight with over 2,000 RMT members walking out across 5 rail franchises all across the country. The union wants more guarantees over the role of the guard and passenger safety.
We're in a dispute because, as we stand today, there's 1 million trains a year that actually have the guarantee of a second safety critical guard on the train, and the private operators want to get rid of that guarantee and run those trains without that safety critical guard.
Rail operators say safety is of paramount importance.
Our network's incredibly complex and very diverse. We don't think it's a one-size-fits-all approach. So we want to work with the RMT to make sure that any changes we make are fully assessed and we understand the impact of them. In fact, for our business, we have to do what's called a risk assessment for any change, and those changes then get independently evaluated by the rail regulator, who gives us our licence to operate.
Train operators are trying to keep passengers on the move with longer trains and rail replacement buses where services are disrupted. The journey home is expected to be worse, and for many they will have to face this all over again on Wednesday and Friday.
Our resources clearly been thrown at getting as many people as possible into the big cities.
Firefighters have been tackling a small blaze at Trump Tower in New York. The fire was on the roof of the building, which is 58 stories high. Several fire engines could be seen at the bottom of the skyscraper. The president was not in the building at the time and no injuries were reported. If you're a woman, you're twice as likely to die in the year after having the most serious type of heart attack than a man. That's according to a study conducted in Sweden over a decade. Researchers found that women aren't always given the same treatment as men and are less likely to receive recommended treatments such as bypass surgery or statins. Our health correspondent Dominic Hughes has the details.
5 years ago, Philippa Hickin was fit, active and healthy and had just had her second child.
I had my heart attack on...
She'd been feeling unwell for a few days, but then she suffered a sudden heart attack that almost killed her.
Certainly I wasn't thinking, I'm having a heart attack, I need to go to hospital. All I was thinking was, I feel really, really unwell and I need somebody to listen to me and help me. And my symptoms, which were achy shoulders, achy neck, achy chest, almost flu-like, were put down to a virus.
Now, a new study from Sweden raises questions about the treatment of women undergoing the most serious form of heart attack. Those suffering from a total blockage of the coronary artery were 34% less likely to receive procedures which cleared those arteries, such as bypass surgery and stents. They were also 24% less likely to be prescribed statin medication, which helps to prevent a second heart attack, and 16% less likely to be given aspirin, which helps to prevent blood clots.
Women themselves are less likely to recognise the symptoms and call for treatment urgently. And when it gets to the hospital, health professionals are less likely to diagnose accurately that they're having a heart attack. And what this particular study shows is, even when they do, they probably aren't treating the women in the same way as men, which really is something that should change.
More women die from coronary heart disease in the UK than from breast cancer. And this study suggests women may not be getting the same quality of treatment as men. But equally, it does show there are simple ways to improve the chances of those women who do suffer a heart attack. Dominic Hughes, BBC News.
Some pharmacists at Boots are worried that work pressures mean patients could be put at risk. A former manager who flagged up his concerns about understaffing to the industry regulator before he resigned in 2015 has now spoken publicly for the first time to the BBC's Inside Out programme. Boots says it's confident its pharmacies do have enough staff. Murray Ashby reports.
Boots is one of the country's best-known high street names and the largest pharmacy chain in the UK. It has almost 2,400 stores and provides a crucial NHS service. But some pharmacists at Boots are worried that the work pressures they're under could lead to mistakes. Two of the pharmacists we spoke to were prepared to be interviewed as long as their identity was protected. Their words are spoken by actors.
Some days you'd easily describe the team as being at breaking point. That's because simply the amount of work that has to be done can't physically get done safely, and it can't physically get done without either working longer hours or working after the store's closed.
Mistakes may not be picked up on, and that could ultimately lead to somebody possibly dying.
The Pharmacists Defence Association union is the largest union representing the profession. It supports a third of Boots' 6,500 pharmacists and is involved in a legal battle to be recognised as a union there.
Pharmacists have told us, working for Boots, that they're finding that increasingly there are less staff available, and that makes their job a lot more difficult and more pressurised.
We have an industry-leading patient safety record. I'm absolutely confident that the resource is there to deliver the patient care. I am confident that we have enough staff.
Greg Lawton was a former manager who was involved in patient safety at Boots until he resigned more than 2 years ago. He reported his concerns about understaffing to the General Pharmaceutical Council.
They told me that they were going to review their inspection model as a result. They didn't interview a single person, and they concluded that there wasn't any problem at all.
Just over a year ago, the regulator also told him its investigation found there was no systemic failure by Boots to provide adequate staff in its pharmacies.
Greg, his opinions and his concerns left the business over 2 years ago and aren't relevant to Boots today. We continue to invest in more people, more pharmacists than ever before. That's into our shops and it's into our processes, helping to make things more safe.
The industry regulator is providing more patient safety guidance to community pharmacies later this year. Mari Ashby, BBC News.
And you can see the full report on that special on BBC One and the BBC iPlayer tonight. That's at 7:30. Three-time Grand Slam champion Andy Murray has undergone surgery in Melbourne following a hip complaint which forced him to pull out of the Australian Open. The injury has prevented the 30-year-old from playing more than exhibition matches since summer last year. Our sports correspondent David Ornstein is in Salford for us now. So he just had this surgery today and it sounds like he's hoping to be back on court very soon.
That's right, Sophie. He said 7 to 8 weeks until he's hitting tennis balls again, and that he's been advised around 14 weeks until he's back in action. That would take us to mid-April, around about the time of the clay court season. However, Murray has taken to social media to say, "I look forward to returning to competitive tennis during the grass court season." So perhaps that means Queen's or even Wimbledon, by which time it will be around a year since he's been out. Murray has been no stranger to hip problems throughout his career, but it flared up, this particular problem, at the French Open in June. He then struggled through Wimbledon, losing in the quarterfinals, and he's not played since, pulling out of the US Open in August. And then he was due to return in Brisbane last week, pulled out of that, and then withdrew from the Australian Open, as we know. Now, he has said that surgery was the last resort, and that resort has now been taken. But he said the surgeon, who he's known for a decade and is said to be one of the most experienced hip surgeons in the world, saw it as a success, and Murray seemed to be happy with it too. He says, "I'll come back from this," and pointed out that it was successful. Now, some people have suggested that this injury could have put Murray's career in doubt, but he's been quite robust in his reply to that, saying, "I'm not finished playing tennis yet. The rest of my body feels fantastic," highlighting that it was just this one key problem that was troubling him. He said, "I think I'm going to be back on the court competing at the highest level again." So good news from Andy Murray today. Sophie.
David, thank you. Pointing end to the Ashes for England. They've lost the final test to give Australia a 4-0 victory in the series. England's captain Joe Root made a half-century in Sydney despite being treated in hospital before play for severe dehydration. Bowler James Anderson acknowledged the visitors had lost to a far better side and said England were now looking to the future. Patrick Geary reports from Sydney.
England have had 3 weeks to prepare for these pictures, but that will make them no easier to watch. After a stomach-churning series, queasiest of all, the captain Joe Root, who arrived at the ground having spent the morning in hospital with a stomach bug. So Moeen Ali took his place, batted for an hour, then met a familiar end, dismissed by Nathan Lyon for the 7th time this series. Incoming, the outpatient. You can't ring in sick if there's a test match to save. Root nursed himself to 50, but it was hard going. At lunch, he retired. His series ended not by an Aussie, but by his belly. Australia removed Johnny Bairstow not long. The rest was nasty, brutish and short. This exactly the sort of ruthless cricket that has allowed Australia to dominate England and win the series with 4 big victories to none.
I do think it's been closer than 4-0. I think we've been on top in some games, if not all the games at some stage. We've just not capitalised on the key moments. All the guys in the dressing room are hurting, and that feeling that you get should make you determined to try and win the Ashes back in 2019.
The celebrations here are over and it's now about picking up the pieces. England haven't won a test match in this country in 7 years and haven't come too much closer to doing so. So, what went wrong? Perhaps the key moment happened in September in Bristol, the incident outside a nightclub which ruled England's star Ben Stokes out of the series. That invited a focus on England's off-field behaviour and highlighted minor incidents involving Johnny Bairstow and Ben Duckett. On the pitch, there have been missed chances with the bat and wider issues with the ball.
You know, I talk about a toolbox. You know, a captain only as good as the toolbox that he's got in his hand. And, you know, Joe Root was missing a spanner and a screwdriver. He didn't have a spinner, he didn't have a quick bowler.
England will be back in 4 years, perhaps even with some of the same players. But to compete in this most raw of cricketing environments, much else in the English game may need to change. Patrick Geary, BBC News in Sydney.
Time now for a look at the weather with Chris Fawkes. Hello.
Thanks a lot, Sophie. Well, at least the weather's not leaving us stumped at the moment. It's quite straightforward today, actually. We've got cloudy skies across much of England and Wales, but further north, a fair bit of sunshine around. In fact, for many, clear blue skies. Causing these big differences in our weather, well, it's all down to the high pressure. In areas of high pressure, what happens is air tends to sink downwards through the atmosphere towards the Earth's surface. And as that happens, the air tends to become drier. Now, if that drier air reaches all the way to the ground, what happens is we get the clear blue sunny skies like we've seen on this Weather Watch picture from Dal Mally in Argyll and Bute. Thanks for sending us that in, Annie Mac. But sometimes that dry air doesn't quite make its way all the way to the ground, like this picture from Canary Wharf, and instead we get a layer of low cloud trapped underneath, and that's exactly what we've got at the moment across a good part of southern England, the Midlands, East Anglia and most of Wales as well. This stratocumulus cloud going nowhere fast is going to be with us all day. I suppose in shorthand, what I'm saying is look outside the window, because the weather you've got at the moment is going to be the weather that you have through the rest of the day today. Cloudy across much of England and Wales, the best of the sunshine further north, but what unites us is it's going to be a cold day either way. Temperatures not getting too much above freezing, typically around 4 degrees or so for quite a number of us. Now, overnight tonight, the winds turn more to a southeasterly direction, and that pushes that low cloud further northwards. So across much of northern England, probably getting into Northern Ireland and Scotland towards the end of the night as well. And with that, we could see some spots of drizzle, maybe a bit of frozen drizzle or snow grains falling from the cloud over some of the hills, for example, the Pennines. And a cold night and a cold start to the day in western Scotland. The Highlands potentially down to -8 degrees. Now, tomorrow, expect a lot of cloud weather-wise. A few spots of drizzle here and there, the best of any limited sunshine across western Scotland. We'll see a change coming in late in the afternoon as a band of rain starts to move in and encroach off the Atlantic. But it will be a milder day. Temperatures could reach 10 degrees or so in the likes of southwest England. Now, as we go through the night time, Tuesday night into Wednesday, our weather front pushes its way eastwards. Could turn quite murky for a time over some of the high ground, some mist and patches, along with this outbreak of rain that will continue to push eastwards. Bit of snow up over the hills of Scotland, and your temperatures overnight between 2 and 5 degrees Celsius. Better weather, I think, for Wednesday. The dregs of this weather front should clear away fairly quickly. We'll be left with a bit of sunshine coming through, and those temperatures will be climbing. They'll be getting back closer and perhaps above normal in places. Highs reaching 9 degrees or so in London, and even further north.
Immigration Minister Brandon Lewis has been made chairman of the Conservative Party, replacing McLaughlin. That's all from the BBC News at 1. It's goodbye from me on BBC One. We join the BBC's news teams where you are. Bye-bye.